All right, today on The Explainer, we're jumping right into a huge political showdown down in Texas. We're talking defiance, major power plays, and a fight that could literally reshape the U.S. Congress. And it all really starts with one big question.
Seriously? Think about it. What would it take for more than 50 elected officials to just up and flee their own state? I mean, to actually risk being arrested? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is a pretty wild political maneuver, one that has massive consequences for the whole country. And man, it all happened so fast.
I mean, look at how quickly this whole thing blew up in early August of 2025. On August 3rd, you have over 50 House Democrats just leave Texas. They're gone. And their goal, to break quorum. By the very next morning, Governor Greg Abbott is already threatening to have them all arrested and even thrown out of office. And then, just hours later, that same afternoon, the Texas House actually votes to issue civil arrest warrants for their own missing colleagues. We're talking less than 24 hours here, and the state government is at a complete and total standstill.
Okay, so what on earth could spark something this extreme, right? An exodus of lawmakers, threats of arrest. Well, it all comes down to a map.
So the whole thing was lit on fire by a special legislative session. And the goal of this session, to redraw the state's congressional districts. Now, you got to understand, this wasn't your normal once every 10 years redistricting. Nope. This was a mid-decade push, and reports say it was driven by President Donald Trump's push to lock in more Republican seats in the U.S. House before the 2026 midterms.
And to see just how high the stakes are, you really just have to look at the numbers. Right now, the Texas delegation in Congress is 25 Republicans and 13 Democrats. But this new map, it would shift that to 30 Republicans and only 8 Democrats. That's a potential 5-seat pickup for the GOP. In a Congress that's already super narrowly divided, a swing like that it's huge. And, this isn't some abstract numbers game. The plan takes direct aim at 5 sitting Democratic representatives. It carves up their districts in places like South Texas, Houston, Dallas, and that Austin-San Antonio corridor. So for these specific lawmakers and for the people who vote for them, this fight is anything but abstract. It's incredibly personal.
So from the point of view of the Democrats who left, this was about way more than just party politics. They went on the record with some really strong language, calling the plan a racist, gerrymandered power grab. Their whole argument is that this map is specifically and illegally designed to water down the voting power of Black and Hispanic communities. And they say that's a flat-out violation of the Federal Voting Rights Act.
So, with the Democrats out of state and the legislature totally paralyzed, all eyes turned to the governor's office. How was Governor Abbott going to handle this? I mean, this was a completely unprecedented move. Well, Governor Abbott came out swinging, no doubt about it. But the Democrats, they met his threats with a classic defiant challenge straight out of Texas history. Come and take it. That was a crystal clear signal that they were not backing down. This had just turned from a political fight into a full-blown war of wills.
And this is where you really see this huge gap between the political threats and the legal reality. On one hand, you have Governor Abbott talking about arrests, getting them removed from office, even hitting them with felony bribery charges for fundraising while they're gone. But then you have the legal experts who are, pretty skeptical. They basically said, look, those arrest warrants, they're not enforceable outside of Texas. And getting a court to actually remove lawmakers for doing this, not likely. And that whole bribery claim, probably baseless. So a lot of tough talk, but maybe not a lot of legal bite.
And there's this really crucial and tragic backdrop to all of this. This political war was playing out right as Texas was trying to recover from these absolutely devastating floods in the Hill Country that killed more than 150 people. So you had critics pointing out that while the state was dealing with a major disaster, its government was tied up in a partisan fight, which just added a whole other layer of controversy to the entire standoff.
Okay, so to really get what's happening here, we need to break down 2 key ideas that are right at the heart of this whole thing: gerrymandering and quorum.
First up, gerrymandering. You've probably heard the term. It's basically the art of drawing electoral maps to rig the outcome. You can do it by packing all your opponent's voters into just a few districts, or by cracking them up and spreading them thinly across many districts. Either way, you end up with a map where the number of seats a party wins doesn't really match up with how many people voted for them statewide. And this is exactly what Democrats are accusing the Republicans of doing here.
And that brings us to the second term, Quorum. Now, this is the tool, the weapon really, that the Democrats are using to fight back. See, a legislature can't legally hold any official votes unless a minimum number of its members are actually there in the room. For the Texas House, that magic number is 100 out of 150 members. By leaving the state, the Democrats made sure they couldn't hit that number.
So here's exactly how a quorum break works, step by step. First, members of the minority party physically get out of the state. That's key, because it puts them beyond the reach of state troopers who could try to bring them back. Once they're gone, the legislature's attendance drops below the required quorum. And without that quorum, no official business can happen. No debates, no votes, nothing. The entire session is just frozen.
But this was never just a fight about Texas. The battle in Austin blew up almost immediately into a national political firestorm. You had major players from both parties jumping in because everybody knew the balance of power in Washington, D.C. was on the line.
And you can really see all the different players and what they're after right here. You've got the Texas GOP pushing this aggressive map to help their party's agenda on a national level. Then you have the Texas Democrats using the quorum break to block that map and, in their view, defend the voting rights of minority groups. And of course, that pulls in the national figures. You have Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker offering the Dems a place to stay, and President Trump applying pressure from his side. It's a full-on partisan chess match.
So you might be asking, why is this kind of fight even possible right now? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is a 2019 Supreme Court decision, Rucho versus Common Cause. In that ruling, the court basically said that partisan gerrymandering, drawing maps just for political gain, is a political question that federal courts can't really get involved in. And that decision, well, it pretty much gave a green light to state legislatures to draw maps as politically as they want, moving these fights out of the courts and onto the state house floors.
And why does this one state fight matter so much to the rest of the country? This number tells you everything you need to know. 220 to 212. That was the razor-thin Republican majority in the U.S. House at the time. When things are that close, flipping 5 seats from a single state isn't just a small change. It's a potential tidal wave. It could literally decide who controls Congress.
So when you put it all together, the legislative warfare, the threats from the governor's mansion, the constitutional hardball, it all leaves us with this really big fundamental question. When both sides are pushing the rules to their absolute limit, and both believe they're fighting for the very soul of democracy, who decides how the game is played? Who's the ref? That's the question that this Texas showdown is forcing the entire country to think about.